got to college, I was in for a lot of surprises. I was the first in my immediate family to move away from home. And I moved to this bizarre place called Berkeley, which I knew I loved, but it took a lot of getting used to. See, I was raised right here, and I graduated from this high school 14 years ago. One change that I experienced in college was being thrust into these grand lecture halls where you couldn't help but feel like a drop in the ocean, especially in my introduction to oceanography class. You're one of 7, sometimes 800 students in a room. The lights are dim and the PowerPoint slides glow so that the knowledge can penetrate our brains. There's something soothing, though, about being a drop in the ocean. Nobody can really see you. I, for one, felt right at home in that ocean. See, I was a student from elementary through high school who was terrified. And I mean the kind of fear that makes your body freeze and your throat feel like the recipient of an unwelcome hug from a boa constrictor, kind of terrified of participating in class, terrified of speaking up. It's not an uncommon fear, public speaking. As of 2017, the National Institutes of Health estimated that public speaking anxiety affects 73% of the population. The underlying fear, they say, is a fear of judgment and negative evaluation by others. Oof. Judgment and negative evaluation by others. Just talking about it, I'm sure we can all imagine a time when the weight of someone's negative opinion totally crushed our spirits. So by not speaking up, we crack the code, right? Maybe you can hide well enough or sink down into your chair low enough. Nobody can see you. There's no judgment and no problem, right? You know the answer to that. But when I was younger, I did not. See, for every one of those grand lecture halls, there would be about a 15-person discussion class on my schedule as well. And your entire grade in discussion is based on something called participation. I had assumed that participation was synonymous with attendance, so I was rather upset when I saw how low my participation grades were. One day, I waited until all the other students had left the classroom so that I could ask my instructor what was up with my participation grade. He said to me, "Camille, you're here for every class, but Jen, who was a student athlete, is gone half the time, and her participation grade is higher because when she's here, she's actually participating." Okay. If it's not enough to show up, what does it mean to participate? It turns out there's a lot of debate on this. Scholastic, yes, the book fair, Scholastic, posed this question to a panel of educators in 2019. Catherine Schultz, a professor of education at the University of Colorado Boulder, said this: "Rather than insisting that students speak up in class and reward those who do with good grades, I suggest that teachers give students a variety of ways to participate." A variety. I can get on board with that. And while I won't argue about the merits of participation in the classroom, I'll leave that to your teachers, I do propose that participation is essential in life. in the jobs you will choose, in the relationships you will have, in the choices you will make when life presents you at a crossroads. Your participation is essential. The risk, as I see it, of not participating is waking up 5, 10, 20 years down the road, living someone else's life and not knowing how you got there. So what if we take this concept of a participation grade and use it as a way to measure fulfillment? On the subject of fulfillment, you've probably heard phrases like follow your dreams or find your purpose and do what you love. Now, I don't disagree with those statements, but I've definitely felt overwhelmed by them. And maybe you have too. Your passion or purpose may look different at 15 than it does at 25. What you love can change from one chapter of life to the next. Let's take these examples. Designer Vera Wang was both a professional figure skater and a magazine editor before she became the renowned designer we know today. Filmmaker Ava DuVernay, who was behind movies such as Selma and A Wrinkle in Time, was a film publicist before she took control of the camera at 32. And at 17, a singer-born Robin Fenty released her debut pop album. Rihanna has since built an empire in the fashion and beauty industries and recently became a mom. As you navigate life's transitions, rather than trying to chase that moving target of passion or purpose, I propose that you can ask yourself at any and every stage of life, how will I participate? Now, we should probably zero in on what it means to participate. Earlier, we went through some ideas about what it isn't. We know it's not enough just to show up, as I learned. And we know it isn't just about speaking up, though speaking up for ourselves can be incredibly important, and we'll come back to that. If we were to give ourselves a participation grade, what are we looking for? I'd like to offer that it comes down to these 3 things: being present, being curious, and being in connection. I'll explain each of those, but first I wanted to revisit something. I mentioned that the danger of not participating is living a life that's not your own. I know this because there are ways in which I didn't participate in my own life and not just in the classroom. In my late 20s, I started to realize that I had been stifling my dreams the way that I used to silence myself in class. See, after I graduated college, I moved to Las Vegas, Nevada to be closer to family. I thought I might be there 6 months tops. I wanted desperately to move back to California, and I wanted to further my education. I wanted to go to business school to get an MBA, and I wanted to one day work for myself. By age 28, I was still sweltering in the Las Vegas sun. And to complicate matters, I was in love. I had told my partner about my dreams from the beginning, but 2 years into the relationship, I wasn't any closer to achieving those dreams. So we talked, and we came up with a plan. In 2019, we decided to apply to jobs in California, and we would go where fate would take us. Together, we would build a future life for ourselves and our future family. I had applied to a dozen or so jobs before I found it. My dream job, working for a business school in California. I could see it. My partner and I, briefcases by day, surfboards by sunset, happily ever after in San Diego. I got an interview with that dream job, and suddenly, everything seemed to change. My partner started expressing doubts, and I felt like my world was imploding. Maybe it's not the right time, he said. Not the right job? What if you just wait for something else? Wait. I have waited a really long time to make these dreams happen. I had waited every time I wanted to speak up in class, but didn't. This time, I knew I had to speak up for myself. Participation meant choosing the life I knew I wanted to live, even though I was scared. And even though it would mean walking away from what I thought was my future. So I moved, alone, to a city where I didn't know anyone in the aftermath of my first ever earth-shattering, heart-wrenching breakup. Just take a moment for that. In the early days of my move, I would drive myself to the beach, hear the crash of the waves, and see the bright orange sunset melt into the beach. And as difficult as it was, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. I've lived in San Diego for 3 years now, and I am thrilled to say that not only did I get that job, I got to pursue my MBA thanks to a generous scholarship. I found a new community in my classmates that makes this once foreign city feel like home. And when I feel like it, I even speak up in class. That being said, I don't exactly know what I want to do after I graduate. The world looks a lot different than it did 3 years ago, as I'm sure you can attest. And I'm finding new goals and dreams for myself as the world presents new challenges. You too will be challenged by people around you, even well-meaning ones, who will ask you, what will you do after you graduate? What do you want to study? What will you do with the rest of your life? I don't think you have to have all the answers. I know I don't. But here's what I think we can do. Be present so that you can hear not only what other people are saying, but you can hear the whisper of your own dreams when they call out to you. What do you hear? Be curious. Ask yourself, how did that make me feel? What did I like about my experience? What do I want to do about that in the future? And be in connection. Yes, you may experience that fear of judgment and negative evaluation by others. But let me tell you, sometimes fear kicks in to keep you safe. Other times, fear keeps you stuck. It keeps you from being seen, from connecting with yourself and with the people around you. I used to think that being seen for who I was the scariest thing imaginable. But now, I feel like it's much more dangerous to go through the motions of life. So instead of doing that, I propose that you ask yourself, how will I participate? Thank you.